Story 1. I was one of the best fencers in my small club in Ontario. I moved to Quebec for university and joined one of the best regarded clubs in the area. The coach chatted with me about my experience and put me against a 12-year-old. I could not get a single point on him. Usually you can get at least one. I really enjoyed reading all your comments. Now that I am a bit older, I should take it up recreationally. It is such a fun sport. Story 2. I swam from age 6 to 18 on a competitive team. I competed in the Junior Olympics several times. Some teammates went to nationals and swam against Ryan Lochte and Michael Phelps. I was tall and strong and had the right body, but no matter what I did, I could never qualify for that meet. I always thought I was on the cusp of greatness. I went to college and tried out for the team. They said I could walk on but not compete. That was when I learned I was in a massive ocean of mediocrity. Story 3. Sports Illustrated ran a story with an anecdote about a son calling his dad after being roughed up in his first 2 college pitching starts. I don't understand it, Dad. In high school, I was striking out 8 of every 9 batters I faced. Yeah, son. But now you're facing that 9th batter every time. Story 4. I used to compete in downhill mountain bike races and won most events in my area. I thought I was fast. Then I went to a mountain bike hotspot, Whistler, British Columbia, and did training rides with a professional. I was not fast. Story 5. Jiu-Jitsu. Some black belt instructors can easily dominate everyone in the gym. Professional black belt competitors make those instructors seem like they have never trained in jiu-jitsu. Story 6. I am the chair of a road running club. We have some good runners who can win local races and finish first at a park run almost every week. Then you realize that if you put them in a 5-kilometer race on the track with top Olympic-level athletes, they would get lapped at least 3 times and possibly 4 times. Or put another way, they would only be able to keep up with the top marathon runners for about half a mile. Story 7. This question reminds me of a reporter who had been a legitimate high school hockey player and was playing keep away with National Hockey League legend Pavel Datsyuk. Skip to 1 minute 30 seconds. Story 8. I was one of the tallest players on my high school basketball team, maybe 6 feet 2 inches in shoes. That was the norm for most teams in our league, so it was not really a disadvantage. One year in the state playoffs, we were matched against a team with a much taller center. That player was Chris Cumon, a 7-foot center who went on to play in the National Basketball Association for more than a decade. We lost by almost 70 points. Story 9. My high school club baseball team was good. We won a couple of national tournaments and qualified for an international one. We thought we were hot stuff and that we were going to crush this tournament. On day 1, we found out we were playing a team from the Dominican Republic. The kids got off the bus looking older with full facial hair. They absolutely beat us like we were a little league team, throwing in the mid to high 90s with nasty off-speed pitches, hitting bombs left and right, and running the bases faster than we could blink. We were run-ruled in the 4th inning and only had 2 players on base the whole game. I don't know what they put in the water down there, but it was a whole different level of play. Story 10. It must have been 2007 when I played in a co-ed soccer league in Hoboken, New Jersey. The best player on our team was a woman named Tracy. I had no idea why she was so good or who she was, other than that she was cool. Then one day former United States national team player and then current New York Red Bulls player Clint Mathis showed up at our game. It turned out Tracy had played professional soccer in Germany and was married to Clint Mathis. He obviously could not play competitively with us because of his contract, but he enjoyed making fun of us and cheering on his wife. During warm-ups for a couple of games, he and his wife beat us in some 3 and 4 versus 2 drills. It was always fun being told I sucked by a professional athlete, because it was both true and all in good fun. Story 11. I have had a few of these, but there is one that sticks with me. I played high school baseball at a large school in a competitive conference. We were pretty good. We did not win state while I was there, but it was a realistic goal every year. My senior year, we were playing against a stacked team with 8 Division I commits in their lineup. I was catching. We had a future Division I pitcher on the mound, and a future Major League Baseball player was batting. The pitcher threw an absolutely filthy changeup that got the hitter way out on his front foot and made him drop his top hand off the bat. He made an off-balance one-arm swing and hit a line drive about 425 feet to dead center. That is when I realized just how good the best hitters are. Even when you do everything right, they can still beat you with pure athletic ability. Story 12. Played old man baseball for players over 30 while living in Atlanta. I made friends with a ball player through a mutual connection. He was playing for the Atlanta Braves and had a mid to low level career. He asked me if I wanted to go to the TED to hit some balls one day. Hell yes. I got to stand at home plate and receive pitches from a pitching coach. I connected and felt pretty good about my performance. Then he stepped in and crushed the ball. The sound of the bat was unreal. The ball disappeared into the sky. We never saw it land. When he was done, he muttered, "Fuck, I suck." Story 13. Since you were not getting many real answers, I wrestled through high school, and in college I kept up with grappling through jiu-jitsu. I went into a wrestling room for a solo workout. After about 10 minutes, Ricardo Lamas walked in. He is a fighter who competed at Ultimate Fighting Championship 145 and fought for the title once. It was just the two of us, and he asked if I wanted to roll. I said sure, why not? What a cool opportunity. We slapped hands. He hit the fastest double-leg takedown I have ever seen, circled to my back, suplexed me head over heels, and locked up an armbar while I was still trying to figure out which way was up. I tapped as fast as I could. He looked at me disappointed and just left. It is always amazing when you experience something like that and then watch the same guy get absolutely tooled by someone even levels above him. Very humbling. Story 14. 1990, San Francisco Bay Area. I played on my high school basketball team. We were a private school that played other private schools. We were decent, not great. We played a team from St. Joseph. There was one player who was very good but seemed uninterested. In the first quarter, our forward, playing defense, stole the ball from him near the post. My teammate was past the half-court line on a fast break layup when the opposing player sprinted from his baseline, caught up as my teammate was laying the ball up, pinned the ball against the backboard with both hands and never let go. He then dribbled through our entire team and, with a 2-foot takeoff, slammed the ball so hard I thought he bent the rim. We did not have breakaway rims in the gym. That player was Jason Kidd. Story 15. I played football when I was younger, soccer to avoid confusion, to a fairly high standard for amateurs. We would occasionally get players who were on the fringes of professional teams or in their youth teams joining us. This was in Scotland, and I was talking about lower league teams, about as far from the top leagues as you can get and still be a professional. You simply could not get near them. I learned that much of football is being able to find space to move the ball, and they always seemed to know where to put it and were quicker than I could react. Small diagonal runs and flicks totally took us casual players out of the game. They also passed the ball exceptionally well, rarely overhitting or underhitting, straight as an arrow. They were usually stronger and faster, basically a level above us. These players were from very low leagues, and it often made me wonder what top professionals would be like to play against. I imagine gods. Story 16. Read about Brian Scalabrine, a retired player in the National Basketball Association. He was not a strong player at that level, but he dominates amateurs in pickup games. His famous line is, "I am closer to LeBron James than you are to me." Story 17. Tennis is not my sport, but my wife had a casual tournament with her coworkers. She was nervous because she had not played seriously in years, while the others played more often and had been more committed recently. Before she went to law school, she had played high-level tennis her whole life and qualified for a professional tour. She decided against turning pro in favor of becoming a lawyer because, in her words, she was never going to be better than a mid-level pro. The last matches of her career had not been great as her focus and priorities shifted away from the sport. I was there for moral support. It was one of her first casual office events as a new lawyer. When it was her turn to play, it took about 30 seconds for me to realize what was happening. A former professional, a few years removed from her athletic prime, playing her sport against a group of people in their late 30s and 40s who happened to like tennis. She completely dominated. It was like watching an 8-year-old try to arm wrestle their dad. There was never a moment when anyone looked like they could put up a fight. She had been nervous because a few years earlier she had worked extremely hard to qualify for a tour while other players surged up and struggled against hungry, up-and-coming opponents. She had lived in that rarefied world of exceptional athletes for so long that she forgot qualifying for the professional level meant she was far better than almost every other player. In her mind it was simply, I could not cut it as a pro, so I am not that good. She was sheepish about the whole thing, but everyone took it in stride. One of the other spouses thought it was hilarious, and she became a minor celebrity at work the next day. Summary: do not play tennis against the attractive blonde. She was dominating in real life. Story 18. I was 19 playing junior hockey. I had already seen many players who were in the National Hockey League or headed there, so I knew my chances were slim. I was kind of just doing it because it was all I knew. I went to some summer skates in the Toronto area and saw a 14-year-old skating with junior and professional players. He was the best person on the ice. He was Connor McDavid. After being outplayed by a 14-year-old, I was about ready to hand out resumes to construction companies. Story 19. I boxed for a long time as an amateur and had the chance to spar with a few professionals. The one I remember best was a man who was very open about simply wanting to make money as a journeyman. He was not good enough to fight for a title and he knew it. We sparred a few rounds. I was doing okay, possibly even getting a bit cocky, until a sharp punch landed on the button of my jaw. It made my head swim and he had to keep me on my feet. It was not a very hard shot, but it was so accurate and fast that I did not see it coming. I could tell he was not even trying to hurt me. He just waited for his opening and taught me a very valuable lesson. There are levels between an experienced amateur and the lower rungs of professional fighters. Story 20. Back in the summer of 1970, a bunch of us high schoolers were playing soccer in a summer league. We were all headed to college that fall, thought we were pretty good, and held our own in the league. One evening the opposing team didn't show up, but on an adjacent field a group of older men were kicking the ball around. Some barely spoke English. When they asked if they could play a little game with us, we shrugged and said, "Sure, why not?" After about 30 minutes we were all winded, they were breathing easily, and they were up 11-0. Story 21. This is not my story but a friend's. He was a star high school football player from Florida. He was invited to Gainesville as a recruit to watch a game. He played linebacker. He was in line with the other recruits to get food and said the guy in front of him was massive, with arms the size of his legs. They struck up a conversation and eventually he asked how big the guy was. 6'5", probably 250 pounds. And what is your 40-yard dash time? About 4.5 seconds. My buddy was floored. He realized then he was not going to play at Florida. He ended up at Division II. The guy he had been in line with was Jevon Kearse. Story 22. I played in a men's flag football league for more than 4 years. We were not the fastest or most athletic guys, but having the same core group for that long made us incredibly organized. We also had my brother as quarterback. He had played quarterback in both high school and college, which helped a lot. We reached and won the league championship several times. We thought we were hot stuff. One year, a new team joined the league and went undefeated. We did not play them during the season, but we met them in the championship. It turned out they were all Division I football players who had just graduated but had not been drafted. They absolutely demolished us. They had insane speed on their routes we could not hope to keep up. They made one-handed catches over our heads, and they made it all look easy. They won 47-6. The one score we got was on a tipped pass that should have been intercepted but somehow bounced into our receiver's hands. I also had my nose broken in that game when a player essentially ran through me to intercept a pass intended for me. They were not allowed to play the next year because they had not followed the rule requiring players to be 5 years removed from playing Division I football. Laughing out loud. Story 23. At the time, I had practiced judo obsessively for about 5 years. After graduating college, I went to Japan to train. I self-funded the trip. I was not on a national team. I spent 2 weeks training every day at the Kodokan, the judo headquarters in Japan. All the Japanese black belts, even the most casual, beat me. I could not sleep on my sides because they were so bruised from being thrown for 2 hours each night. One man stood out the most on one of my first nights there. He was much smaller. I asked him to train and we started standing. Judo has standing techniques and groundwork, similar to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He threw me to my left, to my right, however he wanted. I asked if we could do Nawaza, the groundwork, and that was even worse. That round really struck me because I was so helpless against him. A couple of days later, I was in a bookstore looking at Judo digital versatile discs when I saw his face on the cover of one. Story 24. I've been racing mountain bikes for about 20 years. When I was working my way up through the ranks, there was a race just outside Austin, Texas. I didn't get a chance to pre-ride, and on the first lap, I had a huge crash in a technical rock garden. The next year, I returned to the same race. The day before my group raced, there was a professional race, so I returned to the rock garden to see how they handled it. This was a legitimate professional field. There were multiple Olympians on course. On the first lap, Todd Wells was leading the pack. I think he represented the United States in 3 Olympic Games. As he approached the rocks, he reached down, grabbed a water bottle, took a drink, and put it back in its cage without slowing down or changing his pedal cadence. I knew there was no way I could learn anything from watching them. The skill gap was way too big. Story 25. In cycling, a really strong regional racer is called Category 1. These riders are the best across multiple states, such as college team members and riders who are not yet professional but are considering it. A Category 1 cyclist is expected to hold about 430 watts for 10 minutes. That is the power needed to compete with the strongest riders in Colorado. The current Tour de France winner can hold that power for an entire hour, even after having raced for many hours earlier in the race, for example on stage 16 after doing the same on the first 15 stages. It is not that Tour de France riders are merely faster. They are a different species. My personal 10-second power is less than 2 times the current Tour de France winner's sustained hour-after-hour power. Put another way, if I were absolutely hammering to the point of blowing up, crashing, and vomiting by the roadside, I could expect to hang with him for about 20 seconds. Story 26. I used to put a lot of miles into road cycling. Chris Horner showed up to a team ride and was having what looked like a very nice, relaxed chat with his friend while I was pedaling out of my mind and getting dropped like a rock. He later won the Vuelta a España that year, but I learned to be content with what I had that day. Story 27. Yes, I am going to be the person who acts like chess is a sport. I have played for about 30 years. I coach teenagers, play in and often win local tournaments, study games, and read chess books. It is the equivalent of a kid who thinks he is good at fighting games because he can beat everyone in his neighborhood. A few years ago, an international master hosted a simultaneous exhibition in which I participated. He played against me and 29 others at the same time. All 30 of us lost in under 35 moves. An international grandmaster like Magnus Carlsen could do something similar against 30 international masters. I could not decide whether it made me love chess more or made me never want to play again. Story 28. I've been fencing for a couple of decades. It's one of those sports people sometimes underestimate because it doesn't look difficult if you've never tried it. One of the harder to master techniques is the flick, where a fencer bends the blade with force to strike targets that would normally be out of their line of sight. Historical fencers often point to this technique to mock how sportified Olympic fencing has become and how far removed from real sword fighting it is. They watch the Olympics and laugh at how bendy the blades look, likening them to pool noodles. I regularly fence opponents who use this technique extensively. What many casual fencers do not realize is that the blades are not actually flexible. The stiffer the blade, the more precise the flicks can be. Those blades don't whip around like pool noodles because they are flexible. They move that way because fencers can move sticks of metal with such casual force that metal seems like rubber. Story 29. I played softball on a reasonably good team. A handful of players had played in college and everyone had played in high school. We had one player who was the best baseball player I had ever seen. He hit home runs at least half the time. Turned out he had played professionally. He had played Class A, the lowest level of the minor leagues, and batted .167 in his minor league career. The best player I had seen was, by the numbers, poor against even Class A pitching. It made me appreciate how good professional players are. Story 30. We had just made it to the national championships for the first time, representing our small Newfoundland town in soccer. Our first game was against a powerhouse Ontario team that had 6 players on the under-18 national team. We came out flying and scored first about 15 minutes in. I was standing near the center when an Ontario player, Pat Cubelis, laughed and said, "You think that's a goal? I'll show you a goal." He then proceeded to beat our whole team and score. It was deflating, and the game was effectively over. We worked our butts off, but we were never in contention. Story 31. About 20 years ago, I worked out in a boxing gym. After about 2 years, I felt good enough to get into a ring with other people of my ability. The captain of the Italian Olympic boxing team was in the gym one day. They were letting people get in the ring with him. He had gloves only, no headgear and no mouthguard. I got in the ring wearing headgear and a mouthguard. He was taking it easy on everyone. I actually felt like I was doing well against him. Big mistake. Somehow, I managed to land a jab right in his face. The look on his face completely changed. It went from humoring me to basically saying, "Oh, you actually think you are good at this?" All of a sudden his hands were flying at me so fast there was nothing I could do. I could not dodge any of his shots. If I put my hands up to block my face, he immediately went to the body. He was barely even touching me with his punches. It was just tap, tap, tap. I gave up after about 15 seconds. Story 32. I was 70th in the world in the 100-meter backstroke. I was 30th in the United States. Number 1 is 4 seconds ahead of me, which in swimming is a lifetime. Faster than almost everyone, but still much slower than number 1. Story 33. I played soccer my whole life in a country not known for it. I was good enough to get scholarship offers. I was the best player on every team from childhood until I joined a youth team affiliated with the local semi-professional club. While I was not the best there, I held my own. I stopped playing seriously at 16. I was on a Sunday men's league team with friends when we faced a team that had a 16-year-old who was an academy player at a small club in Portugal and played as a central defender. He made me look like a blind man who had never seen a ball. The ball was glued to his foot while he ran at a speed I could barely match. He made 40-yard passes with the accuracy of Tom Brady and dribbled past grown men in their 20s as if they had concrete feet. And this was a central defender at a time when central defenders were expected to punt the ball upfield rather than try to dribble. I realized then that I was not going anywhere in this sport. He went on to have a short professional career and never made an appearance in the top tier. The player who was orders of magnitude better than me was still deemed not good enough to play even for the smallest teams in the smallest professional leagues. Story 34. I played college football nearly 30 years ago. Recruited nationally out of high school, I was ranked the 12th best lineman on the West Coast and received more than 15 full scholarship offers. I would have been a name, image, and likeness candidate if it were today's day and age. I showed up to rookie camp and cleaned house, even against the junior college transfers. I felt unstoppable. I was placed as a backup tackle on day 1. In the first session of first team versus second team, our All-American candidate defensive end lined up and told me he was going to put an outside spin move on me. "Yeah, right, bitch," and get a sack. My hand was not even off the ground when he switched from an outside rush to a bull rush and put me flat on my back at the quarterback's feet. Then he helped me up. Story 35. I played semi-professional soccer in the United States and was recruited to play in Valencia, Spain. There were players aged 11 to 15 there who were better than any adult player I had ever met in the United States. A player named Nacho, who was 11, scored 6 goals in a game against an under-18 team from England. Story 36. I was a relatively good golfer in high school. I was captain of a public high school golf team and a junior member at a local club where my dad was a member. I was maybe a 7 or 8 handicap and thought I was hot shit. One day I was there to practice and ended up playing around with some younger guys. One of them, who was in 6th or 7th grade and legitimately half my height and weight, shot 72 from the same tees and acted like it was routine. I was so impressed I asked him to sign a golf ball for me after the round. He became very good, but he was nowhere near professional. He played in college and tried some mini tours in Florida before becoming a caddy for a friend who is a tour professional. It puts the Professional Golfers Association in perspective. The best golfer I have ever known was not close to breaking through, let alone winning on tour. Unbelievable. Story 37. Arlington Winter Run in Arlington, Texas, late 1970s. Dick Bierkel, the world indoor mile record holder at the time, was invited to the annual 10-kilometer race, and I, as part of the Arlington Runners Club, was asked to work the event. A bunch of local runners heard he was attending and decided to try to beat the Olympian. Attendance, normally about 700 to 800, swelled to thousands. I was stationed at the 6-mile mark with a buddy to call times and could see the finish line. I heard the crowd increase as the leader approached, and sure enough, it was Bierkel. He had alopecia and was completely bald as a young man. He blew through the 6-mile mark, and it was about 90 seconds before the second-place runner appeared, though it seemed like 10 minutes. He absolutely humiliated the locals. Story 38. This may not mean much to American readers, but I was a club cricketer in Western Australia. I had tryouts for underage state squads and was a decent player but not elite. I was playing a festival match when a player on the other team was Alan Mullally, who had played international cricket for England. He had a reputation as one of the poorest batsmen in international cricket because his role was as a bowler, which is analogous to a pitcher in baseball. Mullally was batting against one of our club's best bowlers, the second-grade opening bowler who was on the cusp of first-grade selection, the next step up being first-class cricket. Mullally began hitting him out of the ground into the trees and the car park, seemingly for fun. He made an excellent amateur player appear completely unskilled. It taught me not to trash-talk professional athletes. Even the least of them are far better than I could ever be at any sport. Story 39. Ultra running. I'm slow, but there are great athletes and then the best ever. My 32-mile run took 7 hours and 10 minutes. The winner, a 52-year-old, finished in 3 hours and 20 minutes. Story 40. Many gymnasts compete in high school. A few compete in college. Even fewer reach the elite level, and only one is Simone Biles. The distance from recreational gymnastics to college gymnastics is greater than the jump from the elite level to Simone Biles. What I mean is that none of us will ever see Simone Biles in a random adult gymnastics class, but I often see retired college athletes who, at 45, are doing things I could not do at 13. Story 41. I was a Division I scholarship athlete and have coached every level from high school to professional. The leaps in physical ability from high school to low-level college, to blue-chip college, to bottom or fringe professional leagues, to the truly elite are difficult to grasp. Each jump is exponentially greater than the last as you go. From millions of athletes at one level to thousands to hundreds to a handful. Because we usually watch athletes of relatively equal levels competing, it is hard to appreciate how much the game advances. The biggest difference is the speed of the game. It is incredibly fast on the field or court because players are all moving at similar paces. Story 42. I was a top 15 junior in tennis in one of the largest states in the United States. I played the number 1 junior in a tournament and was destroyed 6-0, 6-1. About 2 weeks later, there was a small professional tournament in my city, and that junior received a wild card because he was the top junior in the state. I went to watch. He played an opponent ranked 85 in the world and lost 6-0, 6-0, making him look like an amateur. The player ranked 85 went on to lose the next round to a top 30 player. That top 30 player then lost the following round to Boris Becker, a former number 1 who was still ranked in the top 15 in one of his last years on tour. That was when I realized I was probably never going to be a professional tennis player. I played Division I tennis in college on a scholarship, and that was the end of my tennis career. Story 43. I played against Aaron Nola in high school. I batted against him 6 times in my career. In my first at-bat, I hit a double off the wall. I finished my career against him 1 for 5 with 5 strikeouts. There are levels to this. Story 44. I'm getting on a bit, but I used to run 5-kilometer and 10-kilometer races, so I had a rough idea of how hard running a fair distance is. I decided to test myself and see how fast I could run 1 kilometer. I did it in 4 minutes 15 seconds and was absolutely knackered afterwards, throat burning and gasping for breath. I compared my time to the world's best marathon runner. The split for 1 kilometer is 2 minutes 50 seconds. So he runs about 50% faster than me, which I cannot comprehend. He can maintain that pace for an entire marathon, 42 kilometers, while I would be exhausted after 1 kilometer. Seems impossible, but he does it. Story 45. I played hockey through elementary and high school. I was never at a particularly competitive level, but I believed, rightly or wrongly as many amateur athletes do, that I could hang with the next level of competition. In my mid-20s, I played men's league hockey in Saskatchewan. I played against Reagan Darby, probably best known for a large number of penalty minutes at many levels of competitive hockey. This man, who could barely crack a minor league roster, was outplaying everyone on the ice, some of whom had played decent hockey, had probably no more than 60% effort. There are levels. Story 46. I played high-level ball hockey against players who represented their countries at the World Championship. In one tournament, I had a National Hockey League player on my line. He took a slap shot. I did not even see it in the air. I only saw the net bulge. The goaltender quit on the spot. Story 47. I played in a summer tournament the summer before 9th grade. This was 1997, so no internet, no YouTube. I was guarding a player who was shorter than me. I was 6'1". He was 5'9". Tip off, his team got the ball. I was jogging back when I heard a whoosh. Then I saw the bottoms of someone's shoes. A player caught an alley-oop from half court. That player was Jonathan Hargett. Story 48. I refereed a high-level paintball event where Max Lundqvist was playing. I was lying next to the flag at the 50 marker when he walked up the middle of the field, shooting the rest of his team. He did not have a bunker within 5 feet of him at any time but walked an odd line that gave him cover from all other players. The ability to find that line, walk it, and shoot the other team right off the break was mind-bending. Seeing it a few feet away was awesome. Story 49. I played rugby to a decent standard. While at school and in the youth leagues, I played with and against a few players who went on to play professionally, and a couple who played internationally. A few years later, in my early 20s, I was a tight head prop and the opposing team's loose head was much older, probably in his mid-40s. He absolutely destroyed me in the scrum, even though I was strong and a good scrummager. It turned out he was a former England international from the amateur era who had been retired from top-level rugby for over a decade and was still playing at local level for fun. That was one of my last games. I did not quit entirely because of that match. I was already struggling with injuries and work commitments, but it sped up my decision. Story 50. I was a springboard diver. I dove for 15 years by the time I was 23. I will toot my own horn. I was pretty good. In high school, I reached the finals in every state meet and competed regionally in club meets, where I usually did well. A few competitors dominated, but more often I placed ahead of many others. In college, I was recruited onto a National Collegiate Athletic Association Division I swimming and diving program, though I will not share the name. I instantly became a small fish in a big pond and placed second to last at my first conference meet, even though I performed as usual. After 3.5 years of working out more than 20 hours a week in the pool, on the trampoline, and in the weight room, plus competing, I found myself at the top of our conference at the final regular season conference meet. It was a rags to riches story within our bubble of competition. This was the meet that qualified me for zones, a regional qualification meet for the National Collegiate Athletic Association National Championship. After rising from the bottom of our conference to the very top, I qualified for the next level of competition. I was instantly blown away. The level of athleticism and consistency of performance was much higher, and judging expectations had increased. Dives that would score 7s, 8s, or 9s at home meets were now only respectable 5s on a 10-point scale. Between rounds, I watched the other divers and recognized more than 10 athletes who had competed in the Olympics or who were using this meet to try to qualify for the Olympic trials. I had no chance and placed last. I consider myself in the top 1% of athletes in my sport, but these people were the 1% of that 1%. I felt honored just to be there among them. Story 51. I wrestled Greco-Roman as a kid and later in college. I did well in high school, placing in the top 3 in the state for 4 years. I redshirted in college and got crushed. The conditioning and strength of some opponents were otherworldly. Story 52. I played rugby in high school and college and was good enough to be invited to try out for the national team. During one college game, we played a team that had a former Division I running back who lost his football scholarship after blowing out his knee. I remember him getting the ball, holding it above his head, and running nearly the full length of the field with 8 players clinging to him. None of them could bring him down. He did that several times. It was like watching a grown man play rugby against a bunch of elementary school kids. When I was in high school, I also trained with a former South African professional rugby player. He could single-handedly hold up our entire pack during practice. Story 53. I have played Masters-level soccer with former professional and national team players. One of the teams we played against used a former national team goalkeeper as their starting central midfielder. He remained the best player on the field. Story 54. I played multiple sports in high school and went on to play baseball in college. Every year during Christmas break, a bunch of us would meet at a local gym to run full-court basketball games. One year, a guy who had played basketball at our high school showed up to play with us. He was a former All-State player who went on to play in the Southeastern Conference and bounced around various international leagues for the better part of 10 years. I always considered myself a pretty good basketball player, but that night I realized just how not good I was. There was nothing we could do against him. He could score from anywhere on the court whenever he wanted, and you couldn't even get a shot off if he was even remotely trying. It was like a grown man against toddlers. The crazy thing is that when he plays against National Basketball Association players, he looks like we did that night. There are levels to this that the general public will never understand. Story 55. I sparred with a professional Eric Rocha once. I was trying a different style with my stand-up and using a lot of head movement like a Mike Tyson style. I was landing a lot of leg kicks and punches, then diving out of the way headfirst whenever he returned fire. After a couple of exchanges, I hit him with a nice jab. I kid you not, a shadow crossed his face and then he just smiled at me. I thought, okay, maybe I'm going too hard. I tried to move and, for some reason, my lead leg buckled. I stood back up confused. Next thing I knew, he rushed forward and threw a crazy-ass combination of kicks and punches. So I just shelled up. I tried to dive out headfirst to my left and ended up taking a full head kick flush to the head. He was a good sport and asked if I was all right. I was fine, but I thought, holy shit, how did that happen? My buddy who came with me was filming. He showed me the video, and before and after every exchange my lead leg was getting hit. The motherfucker was loading up my leg the whole time. There are levels to this. For real, I never noticed. Story 56. This is not quite what you asked, but my brother did amateur wrestling for 10 years. Now he is a fitness instructor with his own gym. I can still beat him in a fight by tickling him. There are levels to that. Story 57. I am not an athlete, but a referee. I was in the ring once with one of the best amateur boxers in the country. He did not waste any movement and controlled the ring incredibly well, despite being only 15. It was amazing to see how far ahead he was of everyone else in his weight class. He is a professional now. I think his record is 2 wins and no losses, maybe 3 wins and no losses. I will never forget that experience. Story 58. I played college ball with a guy who never practiced and rarely showed up for weightlifting or film sessions, so the coach would not play him. I specifically remember one meeting where he said, "You do not want to be like that player. So much talent and he wastes it." He received a Division I offer, blew it by repeating the same behavior, transferred to a smaller school, and still rarely attended class or practice. He ended up as an undrafted free agent, essentially walked on to a National Football League team, and has had a 10-plus-year career. He won 3 Super Bowls. I still laugh at the "you do not want to be this guy" speech, because even then we all knew he was a freak of nature and every one of us would have traded our dedication for a quarter of his talent. Story 59. I am a decent hiker and rock climber. Years ago, I was heading up Grand Teton on a 2-day journey. We hiked to about 9,000 feet on day 1 and camped. We summit and returned to the car on day 2. Almost to the point where the hiking stopped and the rock climbing began. I cannot remember exactly, but it was over 12,000 feet. A man ran by with nothing but some water in a camelback. We each had roughly 40-pound packs. as did everyone else we met. About an hour later, the man ran back down past us. We asked, "Did you summit?" He politely said yes and kept on running. I was impressed but had no idea who he was. A few minutes later, we met a trail guide and asked if he had seen the man. He said, "Oh yes, that is Jimmy Chin. He lives here and trains a lot up here." I had never heard of him at the time but looked him up when I got home. He was already well known as a National Geographic, an adventure photographer, and in the ensuing years he won an Academy Award for free solo, filmed and climbed the formidable Meru, and is now on a speaking tour promoting his latest project, filming Jim Morrison skiing down the hardest side of Everest. There are indeed levels to the outdoor world. Story 60. I did triathlon. I moved up the ranks and became a local legend. I won some age group races and earned a professional card. I thought I would move further up and even win some prize money. I became a no-name, bottom-tier professional. During one race, I was at the turnaround while the leader was finishing. I still had 13 miles left to run. At the time, I thought everyone was cheering for me, but they were cheering for the winner. It was not fun to move up in tears. My best discipline, biking, was still in the bottom 50% of professionals. After 2 incredibly frustrating years, I returned to age group competition and never looked back. It was more enjoyable, less stressful, and gave me a deeper appreciation for top-level athletes. Story 61. I played a round of golf with a man who is trying to make it on tour but is not well known. He is competing for a place on the Corn Ferry Tour and played at a mid-tier Division I school. In the round I played with him, he shot 29 on the front 9 and 34 on the back 9 for a 63. I am a pretty good golfer myself, about a 1 handicap, but that made me realize there are levels to the game of golf. Story 62. Here's a tennis story for you. I played in high school and for a couple years after in summer tournaments around where I lived. I was a mediocre player in high school and was improving because of the time I was putting in. I was likely a 3.5 player who could play up to 4.0 on occasion, but I did not have all the shots or the consistency necessary to be really good. Because of my lack of success, I would occasionally draw very good players in the summer tournaments, since they were seeded and I was not. One year I drew the returning champion, a teaching professional from Chicago. Short story, he beat me 6-love, but in one glorious game in one of the sets I had him at my advantage. I had made a decent approach shot which caused him to hit a short defensive lob. I was at the net and all I needed to do was put away the short lob, and I would have won a game against a teaching professional. I was nervous. The racket handle had twisted in my hand without my noticing, and when I smashed the put away it landed in the next court over. We were at love all, and he disposed of me immediately afterward to take the game, set, and match. But there was that one glorious moment. Story 63. Muay Thai. There are professionals who eat, sleep, and breathe the sport from the time they could walk. The first professional I trained with was probably around 5'7", 150 pounds. Despite my being 10 years younger, nearly 10 inches taller, and 100 pounds heavier, I could feel the crippling power of his kicks through the pads. My first thought was pity for anyone who picked a fight with him on the street, assuming they had the upper hand because of his size. Story 64. Goalie. I had the opportunity to serve as a backup goaltender for the National Hockey League Old Timers Hockey Challenge in the 2000s and the early 2010s. I had finished playing competitive hockey but was playing in a high men's league. Not quite Senior A, but we would get prospects joining us. I was cocky and had been playing very well before my first game of the tournament. I remember saying I was going to show these guys I belonged. The first shot I faced was from Brian Trottier, who walked into one from the top of the face-off circle. I did not even see it. I smelled the puck when it hit the crossbar and went in. It humbled me quickly. Story 65. In my sophomore year of high school, I wrestled in the sectional tournament and got my ass kicked by the wrestler who wound up finishing 5th in the state tournament. This was not completely unusual for me, since I was probably a below-average wrestler at the time. The irony came later when I watched the state tournament and saw the match he lost. He was absolutely obliterated, like he was being drilled in practice, maybe even worse than when he beat me. That wrestler was eventual National Collegiate Athletic Association champion Dustin Schlatter. Story 66. I run Street Beefs in Arizona. It's a backyard fight club on YouTube. I have watched hundreds of guys fight each other. There are always men who think they have natural hands and can beat everyone just because they feel they can. When you sign up, you list your experience from 1 to 5. Every single time someone claims 10, 10,000, or a million, I match them with someone who is new. They come out changed. They learn that most people have about 15 to 30 seconds of fight in them before they are helpless. Even athletes from other sports like basketball or football are similar. They might have a minute. I have 22 fights, 1 mixed martial arts fight and a handful of boxing and Muay Thai fights. I'm experienced and can probably beat about 90% of people because I know how to fight. I sparred with professional Muay Thai fighters back in the day. I remember one time I had nobody to spar with, so I asked a pro I had worked with many times. He always beat me up just enough that I could learn. He was a good guy. But that day he had a hurt hand and foot, so since I had nobody else, he said he would only jab, which is a lead hand punch. He beat me badly for 9 rounds with one hand. It was the most humbling experience of my life. That being said, the difference between someone who doesn't train and someone who has trained for just a year is large. The gap from someone who trained 5 years and even competed to a professional fighter is astronomical. I'm talking about average professionals. Fighters like John Jones, Demetrius Johnson, and Georges St-Pierre are so much higher in skill that they are unfathomable to most people. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.